I see epilepsy as my best friend, my first best friend, my only best friend, because it never leaves. I mean, there was a lot of failure before I had my little successes. And then during the pandemic, I went back into education. I got the dance psychology degree because it just took my brain that much longer to process things. So I think whatever it is that you do it because you love it and because you want to. Otherwise, it will show.
I think a lot of people through the pandemic gave up hope in the sense that you saw the dark side of humanity and you really became aligned to understanding that dark side of humanity. And I think a lot of art that's come out post-pandemic, which was developed through the pandemic, is because of that. After darkness, there's light. Welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues. I'm your host, Ali Horiat. My goal in this program is to educate our audience about various global issues and on how we can help. Today, we bring to our dialogue choreographer, producer, visiting UN lecturer, Cambridge lecturer, UNESCO member, founding director of nonprofit Tani Gill Dance Academy, Tani Gill herself. A philanthropist at heart, Tani holds a diploma in art history from Cambridge University. She holds a BA honors in film and animation from University for the Creative Arts. And she has a degree in dance psychology registered with British Ballet Organization. Tani is also a mentor for youth, a public speaker, and a choreographer. And yet still somehow finds time to volunteer at the Museum of Zoology and be involved with the David Attenborough building, through which she was featured in BBC Wildlife magazine. That's a lot. So Tani, welcome to the show, first of all. And thank you for making time in all of this that you do to come and speak here.
Thank you very much, Ali. Thank you. It's a privilege. Thank you.
I'll start with asking you about yourself and specifically, how did you get into dance? What was it that said, I'm going to be in dance? Because it's not every day that, the audience, myself, people meet someone who says, I aspire to go into dance and does it at this level.
Well, I have to admit, I definitely didn't start it the conventional way where, you usually have your parents take you to a dance class when you're very, very little. Although that did happen, it happened for a reason that I wanted to just touch on very briefly. I was diagnosed with epilepsy aged 4 and nocturnal epilepsy, which means it's one of the mildest conditions in the epilepsy category that you can have. For example, I drive, I have a predominantly normal life. But at the time, you can imagine, young parents, like, what is this? They thought I was just having bad dreams. One of the side effects of all the medications was probably, as my parents said, it was a combination of your character, which is very hyperactive and bubbly. And I just had a lot of energy, as most 5-year-olds, I guess, do. So they enrolled me into these dance classes because I could keep going till like 2 a.m. if I didn't need to go to school. So I think sort of exercise of some sort and with discipline was what I needed. I would have just like constant ideas, and I was just sort of all over the place. Probably not much has changed in adulthood. And that's really where the dance aspect started in a very sort of, I'd say a fun way. And that's a childhood that I really treasure because it was very, very unusual. I grew up in India as well as the UK. I came to the UK when I was 13. My father was an engineer in the Assam tea estates back when, part of the colonial, had left, but there were a lot of British companies and Assam tea, which is still drunk, I think, today. I see the boxes. And yeah, so I had a lifestyle that was very different from even the average Indians. You know, these huge palatial bungalows now that are used as hotels, like, Experience, I think it's called Experience sort of hotels, where it's sort of like 600-700 a night. And that was my home. These huge lawns, and you could see the North Indian rhinos at a distance. So just sort of talking about it now is so surreal, because I don't think anyone's ever asked me, tell me a bit about your childhood. But yeah, that's just a tiny little glimpse of how it all.
No. Expand on that glimpse, because I think now everybody wants to know a little more.
So yeah, I mean, day-to-day life, I never went to school because of my epilepsy. So I was homeschooled by my mother, right up till I was around 5-6 years old. So, yeah, my days were just, I couldn't wait to finish my studies, which I wasn't a very academic child. I found it very, very difficult to concentrate, to remember, which my parents found, they challenged me on that, because how is it that you remember what type of elephant you saw, or what type of rhino you saw, or, even like the difference between a stream and a river and the silt. And I would remember such detail, but that's because I was interested in that and not in maths. But I think a lot of it's a mixture of medication and characteristics and experience, and how you have to hone all that in. And I think that's a lot of expectation for a 5-year-old child.
Definitely.
It's a lot. So it's very easy to go, oh, it's probably ADHD, or it's probably her epilepsy this time, or it's probably just her character. There's no map, right? In life has no map. Parents don't have a map. Children don't have one. We just gotta, I know it's lack of a better word, but you just gotta wing it, right? So yeah, I think my life in Assam, I owe a lot to it, because I wouldn't be here if I hadn't had all those experiences in that particular order. And then being moved to the city, literally the next 5 years, in that one decade, I experienced nature and city life, like 5 years each. I had to live in the city with my grandparents because of school. So my fun days were over. But yeah, I think elephants, out of all the animals, played the biggest role in my life. They'd like walk into these gardens and drink the swimming pool water. It's just very strange thing. And it sounds a bit, I think the reason why I'm hesitant to talk about my childhood is it comes across, as a little bit, I don't know, snobbish or elitist, like,
No, not at all. Not at all. This is right. But it's part of your experience. It's part of your experience, right? There's nothing snobbish or, arrogance comes about when you take that experience and you turn it into some discrimination against people who don't have that experience, or who you feel, because they didn't have that experience, they are now beneath you. But, to have the life that you had and the experiences that you had, and to remember them and to grow from them and to learn from them and to use them in your everyday life, that's not snobbish.
When you put it that way, I think it's just a lifestyle we live in now. At this day and age, you have to be so careful of what you say. So it's probably that's coming back.
It's probably the censorship that you're used to today that is forcing you to say, no, I didn't live that way. I lived in an apartment in India in poverty, because that's what I should say. No,
that's
and that's true. I have friends from the Nizam family, and they lived very opulent lifestyles, and now some of them are doing amazing things with their lives. And there's nothing wrong about saying, I happen to be in that privilege and I happen to have those experiences.
I think you do with that privilege.
Yes, it is what you do. That
matters the most.
Right. And it is how you take that privilege and use it to your advantage. Both of us grew up in a privileged lifestyle, and both of us now are founding members of nonprofits. So we could have both been snobbish, like you said. I could have been living in my finance world, and you could have, I don't know, gone back and asked for your palace back, and never done that, right? And lived that way. But here you are trying to make a difference in the world with the things that you're doing. Here I am trying to do the same thing, and we connected not because of our wealth or privilege or any of those historical things. We did not connect because of that. We actually connected because we have a very aligned insight into what we want to do in the world. So you see, there's nothing snobbish, nothing to be ashamed of or any of that. So no censorship here. You could be yourself.
Brilliant.
Now,
thank you.
Then now you're in the UK, you're going to school. You don't like it, obviously. Before we get into what led you into dance, tell me a little about epilepsy now that you bring it up. How does that affect you as a child growing up? What happens?
So when I was diagnosed at the time, I was lucky that I had, I'd say, neurologists, some of the top neurologists in the country, who put me in touch with, my parents rather, in touch with neurologists abroad, which happened to be the UK. And it was said, so there's grand mal, which is the ones where they fall and you need to put a spoon in their mouth, or they might bite themselves, or, and then there's, I think that the one actually before that, which is really extreme, very, very rare, is where they have to have a helmet on all the time because they get seizures almost every 5 minutes. And that's a completely different lifestyle. So I just thought I'd just give a rough idea before I get to the one that I was diagnosed with. So I'd be fine during the day. I wouldn't have seizures in the day. It was very rare for me. And I was eventually, later in my teens, diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, which is somewhere out here, but a lot deeper into the skull. And it's so undetectable. Most epilepsy patients will understand this, that I'd say the lucky few are told you have this operation and there's a 50-50 possibility that you could be cured. And sometimes that is the case. You know, I've met people who've only experienced seizures in their youth and then suddenly, nothing. But once you're on the epilepsy radar, it's a little bit like cancer. It can always come back, unfortunately. You always just got to be careful.
There's a relapse.
Absolutely.
There's an opportunity for a relapse,
yes.
basically. Okay.
And then with me, I see epilepsy as my best friend, my first best friend, my only best friend, because it never leaves. I've built a relationship up with it, because I went from, hating it to doing the whole mom, why me, and then she's like, why not you? She needed to be realistic. Because it could be anybody. There is no such thing as sit and feel sorry for yourself. There are a lot of people out there who are far worse conditions, paraplegic, and, the list goes on. So yes, I've done all the MRI, the EEGs, and the side effects that affected me as a child or a teenager first weren't, the weight loss, or they say self-harm. And I was very lucky. For me, it was predominantly, I'd say, weight and depression. So I was quite lucky that way. But it's very difficult explaining it to people you're having relationships outside your nuclear family, friends who've claimed to have known you for a long time, or even like cousins. You don't see cousins that often, right? So they would know of it, but they wouldn't really realize what it would do to me the whole day. It's like running a marathon and you just don't have the energy to do anything. It's exhausting. It's like I've done 9 hours of HIIT. That's the best way to describe it. And I'd say decades later now, this new medication that I've been on past 3 years, I get my attacks now maybe once every 2 months. I've never had a day attack since I was like 6 years old.
Okay. And what is an attack for you?
For me, I'm not awake. Well, I'm asleep when it happens.
Right.
So when I was younger and living with my parents, obviously it's my parents who would see it. And then after I got married, it would be my other half, right, who would have to experience it and get used to it. And it's a bit like if you imagine someone doing the crawl, the swimming, the stroke, the breaststroke, right? So it's kind of like doing that, but going to town on the bed. It's like a thrashing movement, and it's very quick. Or sometimes I just bolt upright and scream like it's a bad dream. So I've had friends like, "Oh, you had a nightmare." I'm like, "Yeah, that was an attack." Yeah, and then I just have a tablet, go back to sleep like nothing happened. Okay. So I am the lucky few that way, but it's the next day, the feeling of complete exhaustion, and depending on how heavy it was, like the mild ones that are like 10 seconds. If I have to, I can go to work, or but sometimes I can't. Most of the times I can't, which is another problem I had getting work. I lived in a day and age where they weren't inclusive. You know, if you wrote down epilepsy, they'd be like, "Are you kidding? You really thought you'd get this job with epilepsy? Get out of here."
And you know what? I just want to say something quick here before you continue. You mentioned that day and age, and we're still in that day and age. We're just a little better at the hypocrisy of it. I don't think it's changed that much, the inclusivity. I just think the veils that we use and the beautifications that we use to submit ourselves as inclusive have changed, because even today people still say, "Oh, I can't rely on Tani. You know, she's not a guaranteed employee day in and day out. I have to be sensitive to these issues. Better hire Susie, because Susie doesn't have those issues."
No,
you know,
it's true.
It's
true.
Still like that. So yeah, sorry.
It is like that, and I put it to the test not so long ago. I won't use their names, but it was a very, very large estate agency, like, you know, multi-million pound dollar company, and yeah, they had an auction house, and they were looking for a photographer. So it was a job that, you know, anyone who could click a decent picture could do, right? So I thought, why not? You know, my son's a lot older, and it's a nice side job to have when I don't have a production to work on. And it's just amazing how they went from being incredibly understanding, and I was like, "Are you sure? Because I want to tell you that once a month this might happen, and it just means that I could work remotely." I mean, I gave them every option possible. But yeah, eventually, you know, they sort of did what I expected them to do, is find other ways. To
politely say thank you.
Other ways to, you know, attack, or however you want to flowery word it. And soon I did what I did before. I would leave before, you know, getting fired. Nobody likes that word, but it exists. Yeah.
So you see what I mean? You didn't grow up in that day and age. You're still living in that day and age. And that's the reality of it.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. But then I like that you keep using these words and terms like you were the privileged, you were the lucky, and you keep considering yourself blessed to be in the state that you are with epilepsy versus where it could be. Because I think a lot of people need to take a moment and hear what you said there, and remember that in every situation, there is that much worse version. And there are two types of people. You know, one type just loses themselves, loses hope, loses ambition, and just yields to that problem, and can't get out of it for themselves. And there's another, like you, who has that whole list of introduction that I had to remember, you know, and it's a lot. So when you say this happens once a month or once every other month,
I heard that when you were going through, I was like, you got the right person.
I know, you know, right?
Because you don't know who sits and looks at their CV every day, or the accolades, right?
And what you do, and you know how much you're involved, and the things you've done. So it's amazing, and that's really why I wanted to bring up the epilepsy, and I'm happy you're comfortable speaking about it, because
I have to say, this is the first platform I have felt comfortable, and not just platform, I think first person where,
thank you.
I know this is going out to the world, but I just wanted to say that I feel safe, and it's about time that I come out with this.
Thank you. And it's a powerful side to your story, because through all of this, you're achieving. It's not stopping you. And I like people like that, because it makes me that much more ambitious, because I say to myself, well, after this, I'm going to start thinking, I'm going to say, I'm tired. No, Tani has a day a month where she feels like she got hit by a truck and she still has to perform. So you never get hit by a truck. So you better not say I'm tired. That goes through me. And it empowers me, right? It empowers me, because it tells me, no, you're not giving into that voice. You're not giving into the negativity. You're not giving into any of that, because everything light and beautiful and amazing is right there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people like yourself inspire me. I have a friend who was on the show too. His name's Howard Brown, 2-time stage 4 cancer survivor. And both times when you listen to his story, yes, chemo, medicine, all that stuff, also, relatively wealthy. So he had access to a lot of medication. Many people wouldn't. And I'm not saying that didn't help, but the resilience, the hope, the fight to continue, that is next level. That's not part of the recipe. That's not part of the medicine you get at the hospital. That's got to come from somewhere so much deeper. And I think the more I think about it, through all the friends that I have who have so much on their plate, I think the resilience builds up somehow in your upbringing. It builds up through that mentor voice. And when I read you're a mentor for youth, I was reading that and I was thinking, yes, I can see that, because here's a person who should be giving up and sitting at home and, everybody catering to her and everybody watching over her and stuff like that. But instead, she's the powerhouse in the family right now. She's the one going out and doing all these amazing things and fabulous stuff and, being all over the place. And the fact that she is able to do the mentorship is because she has that resilience. She has that power to teach people how to continue and how to be strong. And
but it's not easy. I think
no.
It's not easy.
I'm not saying it's easy.
Dark moments of why am I doing this? Nobody cares.
Right. Exactly. Right. But it's embedded. It's part of you, and that's the beautiful thing. That's really the beautiful thing. I mean, you're doing things not because people care, not because you're going to be on Times Magazine, not because of any of those things. You're doing it because this is you. This is the reality. And
you hit the nail on the head.
And that's the core. And that's why I keep saying this. That's why I love people like you, because you are, if we could remake the world and make clones of people like you, we'd be in a much better world. No. I'm serious, because I'm not doing anything. I'm just bringing people on that are these people that don't have the spotlight they should have. Then we have people who have a spotlight, and you think, how did this person get to this point? Because I think politically, sometimes I think to some leaders, and I'm like, this person's president of the United States, or this person's prime minister of the UK. This is a big space. I mean, how do you even climb that? I can't even see you climbing that ladder from, working at the front of the door to being inside the office. Never mind reaching the let alone reaching the prime minister position. So it shocks me so much, and that tires me. That wears me out, because then I start thinking, what is going on in the world? Am I lost? Right. But then I meet people like you and I say, why are these people, why are they not there? And that's part of this program. It's kind of giving that space to people who really deserve it, whether it's here, the publishing house, the art program. Compassiviste is about that. It's about bringing those voices to light. Now, this was all a sidetrack for everybody watching. The question was, how did you get into dance? So let's go back. You grow up, you're in the UK,
so we've gone through that.
You're living with epilepsy. You've come to terms with it, become your best friend. Everything's good. Now suddenly instead of becoming an engineer. Well,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
think
from a lot of my Indian friends, you're either becoming an engineer or a
no,
doctor.
I didn't need to become a doctor or an
Yeah,
accountant. Yeah,
yes,
engineer. Yeah.
that wasn't in the family plan for you.
No,
Okay, so
we
you were
skipped that.
free.
And I thank
Okay,
my great grandmother who was Scottish for that, because I think after
okay.
my great grandparents eloped, everything just got a lot easier for us, for the descendants. So yeah, I think coming from a mixed background, maybe a mixture of cultures definitely benefited. And I think dance, I returned to dance more like just a hobby. I'd probably say in my mid 20s.
Okay.
For those who don't know much about dance, professional dance, when you're 25, you might as well pack your bags and go home. You're too old, you're done
Mhm.
for, basically. Yes, there are opportunities, and there are professional dancers who are older than that. But they're the lucky ones who've got good names to recommend them, or possibly already with a company. But again, that's like a minority. That's a bit like the celebrities of the dance world, who
Yes.
get those hundreds and thousands an hour. That's not everyone, right?
Right. And
So
even for them, it doesn't go way past, into old age. It's just
yes,
you
it
tack
is.
on, you tack on a decade at best.
They like to say it goes till your 40s, but that's just a lie.
Yeah.
They're just kind of trying to be, inclusive and all that stuff. And I get it. It's, better to have hope than not at all. So I wasn't under the illusion of that, I want to become this famous professional dancer, or the word famous is just so cringe to me anyway. But I just thought, I was pretty good at that. I want to get back to it. So I just sort of signed up really at the local whatever dance academy. And I started with classical Indian, because that's what I did back in India. And I always wanted to, and I dabbled with Russian ballet when I was in college. But again, I think I can say this word now. Back then, they used to use the F word. You're too fat. No one wants to see a brown swan. Sorry, you're not getting the part. So, again, I should have gotten very upset.
They were that direct back then?
Oh yeah, I remember auditioning.
It was actually
Greece.
like this?
There was a huge, anyone could audition. But auditioning then was there was a little leniency. There was more freedom. Now it's a lot harder, I think. I'm really glad I'm not in the industry now. And I almost got the part as a background dancer in a show. Again, background, but to me it was a huge deal. It's like West Side. Right. And just before they were picking between, I think, two others and myself, well, I was like, I don't stand a chance. But one of the production team members, I think, had a little bit of what you and I have, is they will remember that girl because of her charisma, of her character, and the way she would promote the show. There's something very organic and internal. Like, it's just, there's nothing false or fake about it. Whereas these two, yes, aesthetically, they're skinnier, they're taller, they've got all the leaps down to a T. But they're just so generic. It's just, and yeah, I remember thinking, hey, I'd rather be the generic ones and get the part than, because I was young, obviously. Yeah. So again, it never upset me. As soon as I could do something, I thought, okay, what is there that I can do? But this one stuck, and I'll tell you why, Ali. My teacher said, Tani, you do know that you're too old to try and push for professional dance. Even if it's for shows that don't take you abroad, even for those, there's just no chance in hell that you will get that. I mean, you're just too old. I was 27, 28, and
to be told you're old at 27 is a little harsh.
I mean, I knew I was older, but I didn't know I was past my sell-by date, right? Yeah. And I think
I'm a dinosaur at 27.
Yes, a dinosaur at 27. That's got to do something. And I think I had my son. I waited till he was about 4 or 5 years old, and I took him to dance classes. And I told myself, I'm going to reach a level that might not be, grand or whatever, but it will get to professionalism. I'm going to go above community. I don't know how, don't say, Tani, what was your plan? I didn't have a plan, but I had the drive and the motivation to do it. And fast forward, I was the opening act for UNESCO in Athens, Greece, under the Acropolis, and still saying it gives me goose pimples. And also the cause. Why did I dance? I don't believe everything is very aesthetic these days, and dance there's an ego that goes with it, and it is a very aesthetic thing. And I found it very often quite, it had lack meaning and depth. So joining, I think, UNESCO CID, was Centre de la Danse, which is based in Paris. It was a institution of all dancers from all ethnicities and races can join without, any affiliations, accreditations. And professional dancers are very snobby about this. They're like, I don't get a nice flashy certificate and a beautiful sort of, backstage parlor, so I'm not going to be part of this. Whereas when they offered it to me, I pounced at the chance. I was like, this is brilliant. How is this not amazing? What a wonderful opportunity to meet people from all over the world, hear about the difficulties. I mean, in the Philippines, as Filipino dancer, 12 family members from a village helped to buy her ticket just so that this little girl could dance. To me, that's the
story. That's the story.
It's not
yes.
about looking cute on stage.
No, that's the story. That. Yeah. That collective is the story.
Exactly. And it was I think it was like the 60th or 60th or 65th anniversary of the demolition of the Gogopotamus Bridge in Greece that my grandfather was a part of during World War II. And, and to honor that, I thought, what better way than to be like, he always said, never give in. That was his motto. And, never allow people to tell you what to do just because it's right. I mean, this is him simplifying it for mini Tani. And that just stayed with me. So I thought, what better way than to honor my grandfather to show that I didn't give up. I'm still dancing.
That is great. Okay. I'm sure he can see and he's proud of you.
Thank you. I hope so.
Well, why wouldn't he be? Let me ask you now. A part of what you're doing is also shattering social stigmas because, a lot of things, the epilepsy, the age thing you brought up, the time that you grew up in the industry and background, and this is just so much. Does that have value for you, or is that all not in the conversation for you? In the sense that, do you do this as well to show that you can be who you want to be, or does that just come through to me and other people seeing it and you don't really mean it? Because there's two different ways of going about this.
It's true. You've got to practice what you preach, and it is really difficult to, like, how do we pick out what's genuine and what's not? And I think the reason why I do what I do, and I think this should be for everyone, is because you want to. But in saying that, it's a double-edged sword, because there's some people who have to work in order to pay their bills. They have absolutely no choice, right? But I think deep down, it is honestly people where financially they're not that well off. Their drive is always far more. So whether you come from any background, any financial background, it is possible, but the journey might just have to be different, right? So I found, like, from a very early age, right into my teens and early 20s, studies was always a struggle. I mean, there was a lot of failure before I had my little successes, right? And then during the pandemic, I went back into education. I got the dance psychology degree that I got recently during the pandemic, because it just took my brain that much longer to process things. So I think whatever it is that you do it because you love it and because you want to. Otherwise, it will show. And I'm not talking about your 9 to 5. I'm talking about the passion that you want to start up after you come back from your 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And taking small steps, because there are many who have people I know with amazing, talent, whether it's painting or editing videos, all kinds of different creative avenues. And they have the potential to make a living doing just that and not stacking shelves or doing whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is the initiative. I want to do this, but then I was like, then why are you sitting here? You need to get up. You need to actively start looking up sites, interacting with people in your industry. It's not going to happen. No one's going to feed it to you on a plate. You have to put in the hard work. And I think the new generation just feel like everything, including the way you speak to them, has to be wrapped up in cotton wool and handed to them.
Yes.
Because they get offended all the time.
And we have to be very sensitive because they get offended.
Yes.
That's the other problem. You can't tell them the truth. No. Because the truth is, And there's always, I can just feel like this, you can cut the air with nice. And I'm in an industry, as you know, performing arts. You're in the thick of it. It's like treading in people. It's out there. The Guardian and Telegraph came out with an article saying that theatre is changing because all the directors and producers are walking around eggshells. No one can say, we can't direct. We cannot direct. Directing is impossible. You have to ask their permission to do what you'd like them to do. If you're lucky, yeah. And it's everywhere. You're absolutely right. In the arts, it's everywhere. I've heard this not just from you. I've heard this from another friend of mine who's a film director, and he was saying, and actually another friend of mine who's a film director, and she was saying the same thing. Both of them were saying, you have to baby the actors so much today to tell them, in a way, apologetically, that they did it wrong and you want another take. And your heart is beating so fast, thinking, what happens if they walk out? Because now they walk out. Exactly. You have to go to the executive producer and say, hey, the money you spent is gone. And you're the one who gets fired. They have us on a tight leash. It's ridiculous.
Very, very
and
tight
so
leash.
the art suffers because now you have to be like, you know what? This actor did 2 takes, and I feel they were frustrated in the last take, and it wasn't good, but I have to somehow do with this take, because if I ask for a third one and they leave, now it's a huge problem. So you know what? We're going to go with this half performance take that we have, because that's the best, without rocking the boat. And so the art's not there anymore. Whereas, you hear stories, even from celebrities today who have been in the industry for 30, 40 years. And they say stories about how one scene took a whole day and it, threw everything back and all that because they wanted to get it perfect. And if they wanted to please the director, in the sense that the director's looking at this from, this has to look like this to be perfect, and I'm not getting it. And I have to keep perfecting my art so that I get it right. And I would feel as an actor, less in my career or in my performance if I didn't give the director that. Today, it's not that. Today, it's like, I feel good about it. If you don't feel good about it, you're not feeling good because either I'm a woman or I'm a minority or something like that. They'll throw something at you. There's always something, and that happens. So I don't like where that is going in the arts today, because the passion's kind of getting lost in all of these sensitivities.
And you're losing the sense of why everyone is here, because what I've definitely noticed, and that's just not in, when I'm here, I keep getting told, all the sentences start with, we do things like this in this country, it's done like that in this country. So I was like, first of all, I've been in this country for almost 25 years, and it's not very different. I mean, performing arts, it's a no-brainer. If you're talking about drama, whether it's in front of a camera or in live theater, actors come, here's your script, you say it, you do it right, you do it wrong, you do it again. I mean, it's not rocket science, okay? It's I mean, I'm not taking the art away. I love it. It's my passion. But if you're not going to, if you're going to tell me how you want me to speak to you, that they have all the confidence to tell you. This is how you must call me. This is how much you must speak to me. And also you are a this. They'll give me a particular name because I'm from a different generation. But dare I say, I'm not keen on that particular movement. It just doesn't work. Do you think you can try it like this? That's my watered down version, which Ali is considered rude. You can't say it like that. Now, I mean, to me, that's polite. Believe me, I've come across directors who won't be that nice and they'll just be like, swear or be like, are you kidding me? Do that again, blah, blah, blah. So,
yeah, you're very right. And it's across everything that has to do with the arts and aesthetics and all of those things, because I have another friend from childhood, actually. We were in school together for a few years, and then we grew apart, and she became a famous model, and then she retired, had family and all of that. And sometimes when we used to speak, she used to tell me stories about back in the days, because there would be, for example, a TV show with a designer, or something. She'd be like, "Oh, I walked that catwalk," and I was like, "Okay." And she'd tell me, she's like, one time I was about 40 seconds from going on, and he just looked at me and said, "I can't have somebody as fat as you walk in my dress." Go where, I would literally rip the dress off, find something else that I can walk in, and it would swap that dress, even though it's pinned for me and prepared for me and everything. They would try to make it work on somebody else. They had that much of control over what went out, because we were part of the merchandise, so to speak, in a sense, And she says, that was bad. That was bad. I don't want that to come back. But then today, I have, people in my family, she was telling me, that are walking the same walks I did. And when I hear them speak to their agent or to, some of the people that they're doing shows for, my jaw drops. You said that? How dare you? And the whole time, because she's shocked. She can't believe that they have this much authority, this much power.
Oh, yeah.
And she says, as much as I love empowering people, I also fear that in your lack of experience in your childhood, in a sense, in a new industry, you may be abusing the power in a sense that it reduces the art. It destroys the art.
Exactly.
Not knowing it.
Yeah.
You're trying to do it because you want to feel empowered, and you want to feel appreciated, and you want to feel like you have a say and you're not bullied, or you're not oppressed in the space and whatever, which is great. And for example, I speak a lot about her because it's something that, I have very good report from. And she was telling me sometimes, some of the people who are dressing you or who are there or who are in the room would touch you inappropriately, or because you changed in front of people all the time, you're half naked all the time, then people would look at you and this person was looking in a wrongish way.
Right.
But you kind of, that was part of the industry for me. I took that oppression on, right? And today, it's much less because, people can speak out on these things. So she was saying, I love these parts of it. Absolutely. But then at the same time, with this benefit comes this disaster that now, I tell my family member, I don't like the way you were walking. And to me, hearing that, I'm like, you're just walking. She's like, no. And then she started teaching me that, look at how this person walks. Look at that.
Way,
there's certain ways. And this person, she walks this way. And there's so much science in the catwalk. Right. And now when I watch, if it's on the screen and I'm seeing, I'm like, oh, I see.
Oh,
okay,
now,
now the background. Now I'm one step ahead.
There's always layers to everything.
There is, isn't there?
Yeah.
And it's beautiful when those layers are maintained.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's important to emphasize that we're not these sort of, Generation X or whatever. I keep, then there's the millennials. We're all like fighting against each other, and they're like your excuses because you were, what was the favorite word? Not conformed, conditioned Oh God, if somebody tells me I'm conditioned one more time, that's almost almost telling me like my culture is wrong, because, you know, there are cultures that believe a certain way and the same way I do about something, even though I'm a different culture, but that doesn't make them conditioned or me conditioned. Do you see how you can be you need to use that word very carefully.
People. Yeah.
And it's a double standard, Ali.
Yes.
They don't want to be boxed, but yet they put us in a box with a big ribbon on it.
Yes. And that's the problem with, I say this sometimes and it bothers people, but I say that's the problem with absolute freedom. Because when you have absolute freedom, somebody's being hurt. But when you have relative freedom and a collective freedom, then nobody's being hurt. And by relative, I mean collective, not, stopping people from doing what they want. But in a sense, when Tani understands that, this dancer today on her show in practice had epilepsy last night, had an episode, Tani needs to be understanding.
Yeah.
And that's part of the collective, right? But then when Tani's in a compartment from the 70s, that says, you're bleeding, you're dying, doesn't matter, you do the show, that mentality, that's not good either. So that's absolute freedom to Tani, because now Tani as a director has slave power over all the cast.
Right.
And in the other sense, Tani's in a box that she's not allowed to speak beyond a certain decibel. So both of these are compartmentalizations. But when Tani can have a relationship with her team, that's when the collective freedom shows. And through that collective freedom, everybody's opinion plays a role. Everyone respects everything that's going on, and everybody works towards the best outcome of the art. So if I was, part of that team and I had a role, I could, for example, I could be holding the light and you say, that was too much light. If I can see that and appreciate it and reduce it, great. It's better for the show, But if I say, oh, how dare you picked on me, right? You picked on me because, I don't know. I singled you out. You singled me out because whatever, because, I'm older and you like younger people on your team. That's why you singled me out. And then I blow up on that. And then there goes the art because of my problems, my personal issues. How did you go from...
I mean, it is sad because I'm teaching people from the ages of the oldest is 40 and the youngest is 25. And I have to start the day of theater with, and I'm talking about every country. I'm not just talking about England. Just in case my production team think now I'm talking about them. So this is a general...
She loves you guys.
I do. They know that. It's like going back to primary, where everything the teacher says now, if I criticize you, it's constructive. Please don't take it personally. And you can see the ones who, when I say don't care, they want you to be like, that doesn't work. Try it this way. They're there to learn. And then you can just see the ones who are just basically, sharpening their swords, waiting for you to trip up.
Yes. But how did you go from dancing and wanting to dance to suddenly, you're now a director, you're now basically everything, because you write, you produce, you direct, you do the whole nine yards.
Do. I mean, I'd be lying. I do have a very large production team. So I think I owe a lot to my producer. So but again, it's collective, right? I don't, I can't remember which director it was, but it was either Scorsese who was saying that sitting on your director's chair with this pretentious attitude of, without me, there would be no, script. I mean, they're just words on a sheet, or there would be no, Kidman or whoever, right? When actually, it's an entire team that it takes, for all of it to unravel. Without the editor, it doesn't matter what you shot, where you shot, how much you spent. Thank
you for saying that. And that's one thing that has bothered me about awards, because you get this award for Best Actor and you go up there and the whole world is praising you and talking about your craft and your art and everything. And they come up there and they do thank everybody, or they thank the team, or, whatever. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the spotlight is shining solely on you. And they have so many categories. I hate the compartmentalization of stuff, because they have so many categories that just reward one person. And like you said, the reason costume looks so good in this film may be because the lighting person, shone so perfectly that light on that costume that it made it appear in the way that you appreciate it so much. And if you saw it in another duller light, the other film would have won that costume.
Absolutely.
You don't know. So why can't we have a collective award, right? This team working together on this project, it's so good as a team that we're giving them this reward of sorts, this, this recognition of sorts, that you did amazingly as a collective, versus, these individual kind of wins. It's the same thing in sports. I always think to myself, when I watch the Olympics, I see people go up on a pedestal and, their national anthem goes up and all of that. And I say to myself, you don't live in your country. You don't practice in your country. Your coach is not from your country. Nothing you do is about you in your country in that sport. Yet you're standing here receiving a gold medal that tallies up for your country.
Yeah.
In an individual sport. How does that even make sense? It doesn't. But somehow here are the Olympics billion-dollar industry, right? So it's crazy how that all happens.
You just said it. It's because it's a money-making racket. If you gave everybody awards and made everybody feel like they won the Oscars, there would be no Oscars.
No, there wouldn't. There would be no value to that.
It's unfortunately,
competition is what builds it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm
okay with competition, though. I'm okay with competition. I'm just not okay with the competition that doesn't recognize people equally.
True.
A lot of sports, take Wimbledon, tennis player wins Wimbledon. They get so much praise for that win. But behind that tennis player, from the physiotherapist to the doctor, so there's so many, even the driver, coach, even the nutritionist, even the family. Some of those people have husbands, wives, and they go through so much through the season to perfect this moment, because mentally you have to be there as well as that athlete. So the household has to be in a certain zone to be able to do that. And nobody's bringing them down from the stands and saying, thank you for bringing this form to this tournament so that this person can win. We don't do that. So competition is kind of like, we're all in this, no spotlight, no thank you, no nothing. And we just are expected to keep doing and doing and doing. And I think after a while, it becomes the person who keeps getting awarded keeps feeling more so that it's them, not the team. Because now they've won 2 Oscars with 2 different teams. Now they've won a World Cup with, 2 different countries as a coach, things like that. And they're saying, oh, maybe it's me because I'm just that good that wherever I go, I deserve it, And so, I don't know. It's something to contemplate.
I think that's why I really I dabble in different parts of performing arts, because I think also it comes with ease for me, because I think I'm glad I started off on stage in front of a crowd, because the comfort introverts get when you're just on your own and you have maybe not more than a couple of people to work with, you feel relaxed, right? And like you can do your best work. Whereas for me, I do my best work. Probably the most people I've had was like 1,000 people watching, if not more. And I just come to life. I love it. But there's only so much you can do with that. As I said, it becomes very, very empty. And meaningless. Okay, I've done it here on this stage and then there, and then I started seeing this pattern of, like, it started becoming about how many people are watching, and this chief guest did not show up, some celebrity, so it's not going to happen. I was like, I just brought my family across the country for the show. I don't care if the chief guest is not showing up. I'm performing. But then if you perform, this will happen. I was like, so it's just, I didn't like all that. It went from a lovely experience into bitter money-making politics that wasn't a game that I wanted. I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done swimming in this pool. I'm going to try something else. So I stayed in the genre, and I wrote because nobody was giving me a script. Nobody wanted to work with somebody with a dance psychology background. And I thought, I want to get into theater because I know I was good at acting. When you perform, you have to know how to dance, sing, the works, right? So I thought, well, if no one's gonna help me get there, I'll do it myself. And that's really what inspired me to write it. I just did it myself, during the pandemic.
Good thing you did during the pandemic. It was productive.
Sorry, say again?
I said the pandemic was productive for you.
I'll be honest, I lost my faith in humanity during the pandemic because my phone, it's horrible to say this, but it's kind of like a lifeline, not more than my TV and laptop. Everyone's different. But I think, I was looking at the evils of social media as well as the geniuses of it and how many doors it was opening. I didn't know what a reel was back in the pandemic. So you're looking at these reels and you go from watching, people suffering in NHS wards with tubes and, what I call the octopus scenario to the next reel about, anti-vaxxers. It's not true. It's like, it's all Photoshop and all that. And you're just like, and then you see, when I was working at the zoology museum, you get to see all the animals that, right from the dodo up to now that are extinct. And in my lifetime, to know that there's the white rhino, forget the tiny little bugs. There's so many, I'm sure, that are extinct. But that's pretty sad. That's what the world is coming down to. And that's what inspired Jupiter's Ghost was... I gave up hope. I'm like, I'm done. I think we don't deserve to live. We deserve to be wiped out and start fresh. A bit like, switching the computer on and off, restart button, reset. And then I just started typing. Yeah. And that was it.
I think a lot of people through the pandemic gave up hope in the sense that you saw the dark side of humanity and you really became aligned to understanding that dark side of humanity. And I think a lot of art that's come out post-pandemic, which was developed through the pandemic, is because of that. After darkness, there's light. And, you see that in the darkest of spaces. You look at history and you look at places that have been through horrific histories. In recent times, very recent times, you talk about the Holocaust, you talk about Japan and the World War II bombings, and whole areas were wiped out. And you look at them now, or you travel there now, and there's so much life in those places, and there's so much hope, and there's so much more resilience, and so much more inclusivity, and so much more wanting to rebuild humanity in a way. And I think the pandemic did that because we never experienced the Holocaust. We never experienced the horrific things that happened in different places at different times. The residential schools in Canada, I was not an Indigenous child being tortured by the Catholic Church, and so I can't speak to that. But what I can do is I could try to learn from those things and try to do something about it. And I think, here you are, like I said, like many people said, humanity sucks. We should just be extinct. There should be mass extinction. I wish a comet hits the world and there's a mass extinction. And then 20,000 people who survive will really wake up. They will have that awakening and they will do the right thing this time around. A lot of people were thinking that in their minds. It was this kind of like collective suicide in a way, but this hope of it.
Right.
But then what happened is a lot of people turned that around like you did. And they said, no, I'm going to try to do something that brings hope because I'm hopeful. I grew up with all these issues that built me and made me strong. And so I'm hopeful. I'm not going to just pull the blanket over my face and just cry and sleep and say humanity sucks. And I'm not going to go out anymore and just, be that depressed person. I'm going to swap my depression for hope, and I'm going to go out there. And that's what you did. You went out and, you put this together.
Yeah.
Before we get into Jupiter's Ghost, I want to ask you, you are, how do you put this? You're the first person in a position that has been handed to a woman. Please, I don't want to speak to it. I want you to tell the whole story. Tell the whole story of how this happened, because this is something that goes in the record books.
Okay. So, it started 11 years ago, inadvertently, actually. So, as you know, I love art and I'm involved in it. So one of the things that I do a lot at home is paint and draw. So I was looking to join like a class, just a regular life drawing class in particular. Cause I studied, Renaissance, and I had a thing for Michelangelo's Grandmasters. So life drawing played a large part in my school and university role. It just popped up and I joined, and it was ran by somebody called Dennis Goldsmith. Goldie, was his name. And, I used to go there quite often, and then I suddenly stopped because I took dance very seriously and I couldn't go as much, right? And then I went back and, we just started building this amazing relationship. Goldie at the time was in his 60s, and, he was the most forward-thinking, ahead of his time, and he had this real zest for life. I mean, we all meet people like that, if you're lucky enough, from time to time, right? Who just, it could be just your neighbor or your uncle or somebody random, and he was one of them. And he said that, you seem to really enjoy it and you help me and you're really great, and all you have to do is put out the easels and chairs, and it's a little bit exclusive because it's invitation only, being King's College. And we got to be, a little bit careful because we're treading on, of course, the university students' ground. This is belongs to them. This is their privilege. They've earned it, and they really have. They've worked really hard. So, but to see how art is thriving in King's, I have to say, out of all the 31 colleges, King's College is definitely the most progressive. And yes, unfortunately, Goldie, who was a bit like my grandfather and best friend, lost his life 2 weeks ago.
Oh, my condolences.
Yes, no, that's okay, because it really brings the story full circle. And, I was suddenly left, cause, oh yes, I'll help you. But I never really wanted to take, I don't like the word take over, first of all. It's a service that we provide for the graduates and students. And I had my, some 5-6 predecessors before me. And even though it was invented, when I say, before I was born, it was invented, this idea by a woman, it was run by a man, like a man ran it. So you can see that even there were probably, again, thinkers ahead of their time, but you got to conform. I don't know what King's was like in the 70s, so I'm not going to speak about that. But I know what it's like now. And I think we forget that there are many progressive, amazing people out there who are not that backward in thinking, and that they're not like that. But you still, as you said, it is still like that. It's, the people who crawled out of the woodwork and who I thought were my art friends. I mean, these are not my best friends, but, I've known these people for 11 years. To suddenly just be like, who are you? You are just this Indian woman. I mean, you don't even have a PhD in anything. I mean, I was spoken to like that by some of these people. So that's, and so when people say, oh, nobody talks like that anymore. You walk around eggshells. Not in Cambridge.
Okay.
In Cambridge, it's still quite, they're very confident. They can get away with it. They own, 98% of the city. I mean, you're fighting with a £7 billion, industry.
Behemoth. Yeah.
It's a Goliath, right?
Yeah.
You can, what do they care about, being inclusive or diverse? I'm sorry, but they'll tick boxes when they need to, but they're not going to cater to your feelings.
No.
But having said that.
And some of those places don't need to tick boxes. They make their own boxes.
No, but I think I was lucky that the university were actually very determined and adamant that you're not just getting this because, and I love that, you're not getting this because you're a woman, you're not getting this because of your ethnicity, you're getting this because we can see that you can do the job.
Because you deserve this.
And that is why I am doing it, for no other reason. Of course, because in honor of my best friend, but still.
And you've become the first woman to hold the position and change this archaic mindset. That's a revolution.
It is. Well, it
is a revolution. It just happened maybe too peacefully for you to recognize it that way.
Yeah.
Maybe if you were pushed down a flight of stairs or something and got hurt, then you would have felt more revolutionary about
Absolutely.
it. But it is a revolution.
I think it's also the way it transpired, like with great loss came this amazing position. So it felt very conflicting. It felt almost wrong at times, to be quite honest. But I know Goldie wouldn't want it any other way. It's like you're doing this for the students, and then you find someone else who is capable, and then it's just you just keep passing the baton.
Whoever it may be. Yeah. And that's beautiful. Good job.
Thank you.
I must say that because it's also not a small place. It's not like it's Cambridge. It's it's not some small thing to change. And on that note, Tani, we'll stop part 1 of this 2-part series. It's not a trilogy like Jupiter's Ghost, but it is a 2-part podcast because there's a lot to talk about with Tani. And we will see you all in part 2. Click on part 2 after this.